Over the past 60 years, there's been a growing trend of immigration into urban settlements. The lack of opportunities in the rural setting have been a key player in this. Poverty, crime, and below standard living conditions are prevalent. In Metro Manila, informal settlements like these grow in a number of different sites, the largest of which are found in Manila, like Tondo and San Andres, and Quezon City, in Bagong Silang, Payatas, and Sitio San Roque. Two-thirds of poor people are in rural areas, yet the concentration are worse in urban areas. 4,035,000 informal settlers thrive in Metro Manila. 37% of these live in subhuman conditions according to FIES. Large and neglected property is a magnet for these settlers. The lack of law enforcement in sites like these enable them to occupy the land. In the past 15 years, the government has slowly been leasing and bidding away these properties for private corporations to develop the land into a more productive program. The proposed development to be later described can actually be a build-operate-transfer development. The initial income coming from this development may be small, but in the long run, the place can be a fertile ground for professionals who are useful to the market. This results to the displacement of people and destruction of communities. A development like Vertis North in Quezon City exemplifies this phenomenon.
Samantala inyo po nakikita ay live na kuha sa may Agham Road dito sa may Quezon City kung saan nakikita natin yung demolition crew na pumapasok na dito sa may mga kabahayan na kanilang itatakdang i-demolish ngayong araw. At sa atin nakikita ay may mga nag-umakyat na sa bubungan ng mga bahay at tila magsisimula na sa kanilang demolisyon.
We were tasked to study the site of North Triangle as a means of introducing a PUD best suited to the context. North Triangle is located in the 1st District of Quezon City. The district has a healthy middle-class community with pockets of high-density informal settlements. The economy of the area is heavily based on the fact that it is commuter-centric with multiple transport options and large-scale commercial establishments. The 100-hectare site covers a multitude of different institutional, public, and commercial establishments, a prime location in the center of Quezon City. Sitio San Roque is placed in the center of this land. Sitio San Roque is home to roughly 2,000 to 16,000 families. The parcel of land that has been occupied by these families is government-owned and is currently leased to Ayala Land Corporation. Sitio San Roque, part of Barangay Pag-Asa in Quezon City, is often associated with the reputation of takbuhan ng magnanakaw and often heard as magulo. This area has long been credited for the crimes of the area. Seeing the community in this way is a mere surface-level interpretation of the site, for during the site visits observed was a thriving community of people from different walks of life. The bad reputation greatly increases the negative views of the public for the place, and the stereotypes are not credited as a legitimate means of defining the space. But delinquency itself has deep roots that stems from an empty stomach. The community actually has a commercial center in the form of a palengke, which is also a part of their livelihood. Other than this central node, the community uses common spaces as forms of interactive spaces within blocks of residential units. These nodes are scattered within the whole vicinity and takes its form through basketball courts and open courtyards. One of our group mates, Kenny Roger Laconza, has interviewed an informal settler or NHA personnel in Sitio San Roque.
Okay, so I interviewed an informal settler and I can summarize their struggle in two street words, putaw and hampay. Alan Virgilia, a single mother in her mid-50s, shared to me the horrors of the assumed-to-be haven in Kasiglahan ng Laconza. Putaw refers to the contribution a person gives to a community organization. 5 pesos per a period of week or two is expected from the residents of an informal settlement in order to maintain the shared electricity and water supply. With their small livelihoods, the informal settlers of Sitio San Roque can pay dues regularly. Things changed when they moved to the relocation of Rizal. The Montalban Rizal relocation is so secluded that people cannot possibly have a market to serve, unlike in QC, wherein they can just start a small eatery with 200 pesos and make it circulate. In Rizal, no one will ever come by and eat from their stalls. They are given scrap cloth, which they can weave and made into rugs, but no one in the relocation site will use it aside from themselves. They produce and consume their own products, but since they are penniless in general, they end up borrowing for their sustenance. Even the petty kangkong growing in their backyards can hardly be sold. It appears that they have an unwanted vegetarian diet after all. Poor living conditions, the boredom, can even drive people out of their minds. Alan Berhil's son have been nearly driven to insanity due to hunger, depression, and lack of sleep. Now, he drives his pedicab along Agham and North Avenue during the weekdays. With subhuman conditions, the people in the relocations can hardly pay their butaw. The question here is, why do they still have to pay dues in the relocation? Well, because the things that are promised to them hardly turn into reality. Instead of getting free electricity and water, is promised to them, and among other utilities, for a limited period just for a startup, they get nothing but 5,000 pesos and 3 kilos of rice. And if you're thinking that they get this ration on a regular basis, no. They got it as a price for willingly surrendering their dwellings in the Vertis development. Sadly, they also paid the price for this decision. Well, the second word is ampao, which literally means Rice Krispies, but in street term, it refers to something empty or hollow. So, Alin Vergilla said that the houses in the Rizal relocation are ampao, referring to the substandard construction of it. Whenever there is a fight, according to her, the agitated person hits the wall, and with enough force, his punching hand will definitely go through it. Substandard housing devoid of livelihood, that is the relocation in Pasiglahan ng Rizal. Due to this condition, the relocated informal settlers still cling to their formal settlements in jobs, stay in QC for the working week, and return to their home in Rizal during the Sundays. A fair day off for a fair week's hard work. What if Sitio San Roque can be developed and its current settlers be relocated in situ?
Ayala Land plans to develop this as a PUD that disregards these settlers and will displace the 16,000 families living in the community. Currently, the first two phases of Vertis North is in place, both found on the northwest and southwest ends of the area. Slums is what we call the less developed part of a city whose settlers may or may not legally own the lot where they build upon. Squatters are the ones who we call who have no legal ownership of the lot they occupy, and they usually come in large groups. In fairness with these kinds of settlements, it highly reflects the mode of living of its occupants, hardly a characteristic of middle-class subdivisions. Though untidy, such settlements are far better than socialized housing. The location of socialized housing developments and the very houses it offers are far more substandard than what with the informal settlers established from themselves. Concrete walls does not indicate a better house. It signifies nothing. The wooden houses of the riverbank dwellers are much more suitable for human occupancy than these concrete cages. Having no legal restrictions on the acquisition of the lot, informal settlers have the informal discretion to occupy whatever size of lot they fit. This is so because in such a setting, a governor supervises and receives payment of land. Given this fact, one can deduce that a handful of these informal settlers has a green thumb for business, which allows them to have a living standard quite above the rest surrounding them. Hence, even in their own city inside the city, they have a diversified population, which any developer can take advantage upon.
These people know the zen of living in such a potent location. Wealthy developers only have insights through cold documents. For example, a case study. After multiple site visits spanning for 3 weeks, and through the observations and data that we gathered, we came up with 2 specific iterations of the proposed PUD.
Misguided developments are beast gods who concentrate its life-giving force on the cities, and like monkeys, they throw away the useless peel to the outskirts. That is the fate of the settlers in the lots grabbed by profit-thirsty capitalists, driven from their current limbo to the deepest circles of hell. Our brethren are thrown into substandard shelters with subhuman conditions therein and thereout. What should be done is an in-situ development and relocation. That is developing the area batch by batch, ensuring that the current settlers remains intact with their familiar surrounding. This is so for 2 main reasons. 1. The existing settlers have a developed sense of stewardship with the place. And 2. They are already part of the socio-economic makeup of the place. Removing one character and the ecosystem gets disrupted, perhaps in an astounding scale, and the ecology therein will be burst asunder. No development should work against the humans it is supposed to cater.
Studying the current programming of Sitio San Roque requires a study of the current infrastructure within the community. Main roads of the community are identified, seen in actual internal visits and in satellite imagery. Minor roads are also identified. This is derived from patterns from the satellite imagery. Open spaces come after, as seen in the image. Programming within the community was also seen and identified in the site visits. These mainly consist of residential and commercial spaces for services, wet and dry goods. Consideration for the as-built development in the immediate surroundings is essential for the next phase. This will be the determined points for the nodes and paths of the users, namely the vertex development, trinoma, transport options, and institutional spaces surrounding it. We introduced a gradation of densities when it comes to the distribution of residential units so as to keep everything harmonious. These are called density rings. People want to be close to shops for convenience, yet there is a point where they want to be away from these for quiet and green. This contradiction can be overcome by having the sparsest portion of the residentials nearest the commercial areas and open spaces, and the denser as one goes to the center. Community-specific establishments are quiet and closed by the higher density residential zone to add a tinge of exclusivity, yet not in the extreme level of sacralizing itself from the outside world. Human environment should not only be accessible to people but also passable by them. Cities today are devoted to serve people with cars, providing petty walkways for human use. A walkable development is designed to suit the human scale, making it more subliminally identifiable to himself. The process of determining specific road networks in the site is a twofold process. First would be the realistic paths, wherein the main obstruction considered is the creek and MRT, since they present the biggest hurdles for transportation and permeability through the development. Secondly, we trace the most efficient path, passing through the inside of the proposed development that people would take in order to transport from one existing off-site activity node to another, the shortest path between 2 points being a straight line. Determining the most efficient path for network would then be derived from this initial study. The green lines determine the assumed paths in the initial road network presented earlier for the transient users. The blue lines represent internal circulation of local users from minor paths to larger major paths. Overlapping the paths would determine some assumed nodes and open spaces, both according to the densities and the places where people intersect. It is worth noticing that in any organically formed community, there are areas usually open where all activities tend to converge into. These are what we refer to as activity nodes. Such areas are very potent to be sites for community-inclined establishments. The orange squares denote activity nodes along lengthy roads and roads intersections. Long roads devoid of activity other than being walked upon is tedious. Centers of activity located along its length is a relief to such nuisance. The use of the road is maximized by the addition of gastronomic compounds, and such will increase the collective income generated in the development. Activity nodes on intersections are placed so as to give air to the expectedly constricted points of the road network. Though not all intersections are made into activity nodes so as to not overdilate it and cause further annoyance due to overwhelming activities going on in all directions. The marketplace is an integral part of the Filipino commercial culture. Contrary to chain supermarkets and malls, the traditional marketplace is based on human interactions, the suki system and the tawad, whereas in the former, the social interaction is limited to asking the staff where the goods are and the cashier telling you to come again. The patronization of goods is based on the brand names rather than on personal bonds with the tindera, and prices are fixed in chain markets, removing the mini chat called tawaran. Buying good in chain marketplaces is cold, bland, and mechanical, all far from what the inner person yearns for even in a busy departmentalized profit-seeking city. Sweat equity is a contribution to a project or development in the form of effort and toil. The people work for the house they will soon occupy. Batch by batch, the homeowners-to-be are accepted in the program and contribute at least 300 hours of building their own and neighbors' homes. Sweat equity is as good as cash equity and is the most acceptable non-monetary contribution financially challenged individuals can contribute. Religion, though a very old institution, is still a go-to for both pacification of the masses and to keep their aspirations high. Another community-inclined establishment are workshops which sharpen the skills of the people in the community. On-foot and pedicab-based transportation in situ will be applied in the development as well. As much as possible, the development aims to limit on-foot passability because experience shows that motor vehicles sharing traffic with pedestrians will end up into the former's domination of the streets. A walk in the park is a common expression meaning something easily done or effortlessly satisfying. This sense of ease is what a development should impart to its users for them to patronize it willingly. The more profit generating something is, the more exclusive should it be. This is so in order to give a sense of prestige to such part of the development, and pragmatically, it surrounds these more prized establishments with lesser shops just to diversify options. A sense of security is derived from the juxtaposition of such commercial establishments. Open spaces are open arms that welcomes the indifferent outsiders and persuades him or her to explore more than what meets the eye. A part of the open space nearest the creek is turned into an amusement park so as to maximize the use of the site. Given the two programming iterations presented, it is evident that the two situations are in contrast to each other's ideals. The strengths and weaknesses of each program helped eliminate the essential and non-essential points of the development. From the synthesis of the two, we will come up with the program best suited to the needs of the site and its future occupants.